base and Beitsa.
Yep.
We're going through this Mishnah that the Gemora brings from Orla.
Should we do it again?
I think it bears repeating. The reason why Gemora is bringing it is just to give a context.
What's choshev, what's not choshev?
Right. Well, the Shita, it turns out, of Rabbi Meir, that something is called a davar chashuv if it's counted when it's being sold. That shows that each unit has a chashivus, and therefore he says in Hilchos Bittul, it's not batul. In the Mishnah we see there's a machlokas about that issue of what's called chashuv and what's, and because of that not batul, the Rabbanan hold a different shita. There's only a few specific things that were very chashuv in their day that are considered chashuv, but they don't agree with Rabbi Meir that anything which is counted is chashuv enough not to be batul. Rabbi Yeshiva seems to agree with the Chachamim, but rather than 6 things, he adds an extra one to make it 7. And we were going to go through the Rashis on this, as well as eventually we have to go back to our subject, which the Gemora was trying to explain why the Beitsa says an egg is not batul. Which kind of isur are we talking about? If we're talking about a suffix treifa egg, we don't understand why it wouldn't be batul. There's no reason, theoretically. It's not a davar sheishel materium, the Gemora said. If it's not an egg that was born on Yom Tov, it's a regular isur that doesn't have a special time limit. So why wouldn't it be batul? The normal dinim of bittul would allow it, see it theoretically. So the Gemora comes up with a theoretical answer that maybe an egg is considered a davar chashuv, according to Rabbi Meir Shita, because it is sold by number. And the Gemora admits, though, that it's dependent on the 2 gersaos in the Mishnah, which we already know that there are 2 ways of reading that line of Rabbi Meir, whether it's Es Shadarko Limnos, which would be a more specific way of saying that it has to be always counted, and eggs are not always counted, so that it wouldn't be a davar chashuv, would still be a problem why the Beitsa says they're not batul. But the other gersa, though, would be very good if it was going like that Manda Omer, who says in Rabbi Meir, Kol Shadarko Limanos, which would mean that anything which is counted, even some of the time, which eggs are counted some of the time when they're sold. Some people, when they sell eggs, they do sell them by unit, by number, like we do today, but not all people do. But if that's those gears of coal, then it would include even those. So then the Gemora would be happy why it's not batul, because it would be, according to Rabbi Meir at least, a davar chashuv. And we could say the Beitsa is going according to Rabbi Meir, and that would be okay. So let's go over this Mishnah again in Orla, just to see the context of this question of a davar chashuv not being batul, according to Rabbi Meir, according to the Chachamim, according to Rabbi Yeshiva, and then we'll be able to see the Rashis that are explaining that Mishnah in Orla. And it's especially a matter of happiness when we find these Mishnayos that we know there's no real Gemora on these Mishnayos. There's a Yerushalmi on a lot of these things, but there's no Bavli on Seder Zroim, for example. So it's very important to take advantage of these Gemoras where there is a Rashi on this now, and there is a Gemora on it. Okay, so let's see the Mishnah again. So we're about 8 lines before the wide lines. Disnan. Okay.
Well, one it has for chavile means bundles of beans, of kilayim, keren. Should go mixed in with grapevines.
Well, officially it would mean that they grew in a field where the grapevines were also growing close, either in the same field or too close. But it could be really any other doesn't always mean it has to be with the grapevine. It could be any other, as Maseches Kiloim discusses, as we spoke about yesterday, that any two species that grow too close in proximity make each other usher. We just call the Kiloya Kerem because that's like the official title. They shall be burnt, meaning they're usher bahana, and they have to be disposed of by burning them. That's what we do with things that are usher bahana. Well, if someone wasn't careful, right? Every year it happens that usually what happens in a field is that things grow a little bit more each year than they did the year before. So let's say 2 years ago you had these two fields that were separate, and then they grew a little bit more each year, and then finally there was a year where they were mamish growing right up against each other. That would be a problem. A certain amount of the crop of both fields would be usher. That's why wall is very important. Proper wall will keep them separate, no matter what. Proper stone wall will keep them separate. But people in the old days couldn't afford a wall, or they didn't have enough room to build a wall. They just wanted to grow everything in their small plot of land. Well, then you have to be very careful they don't grow too close together. Okay, so these kind of bundles grew too close together to something else, which could be vines, of course, it could be any other type of crop. And if two species grow together, too close together, then they make each other asa, because of this Isra of Gilon. So that's the regular halacha. But we say, what happens if what? Nisarvu. First of all, Nisarvu b'acheros. That's the first stage. If these kavile tiltan, these bundles of beans that have become usher because they grew too close to other things, if they became mixed up with other, let's say, kavile tiltan, which weren't usher, right? He had two fields. One became usher, the other didn't become usher. And then the ones that became usher got mixed up in the bundles of the ones that were okay. So now what does he do? Can we say bittul? And what about if those ones get mixed up again in another set? V'acheros b'acheros. Those other ones that already were mixed up got mixed up with more. So like it's even a smaller amount of the real isser is mixed up in there. So it's even more likely to say bittul. Right? Let's say 10 got mixed up with 20. So we still have a rove. We could say rove theoretically, but then that 30 gets mixed up with another 30, then again you have a smaller amount of isser that should be batal. So we say it depends. If it's what? So we're not going to, in Rebbe Meir it's not going to make a difference. In the Rabban it's going to make a difference how much it was.
Kulan, there's no bits and all of them should get burnt.
Right. All of them retain the same Isser as the first batch, which means there was no din of bittul whatsoever, no matter how much each group was. And therefore, that's the question. Why was there no bittul? Why did these chavilot not get batal? We know afterwards Rabbi Meir is going to say what? The reason why there's no bittul is because of what? Because of his famous shita that what? Then when does something not get batal? When do we say one of the things that doesn't get batal is if it's davar chashuv? And according to Rabbi Meir, what counts as a davar chashuv? Something that is counted by when it's sold, meaning it's sold by unit. So I assume these chavilot of tiltan are sold by unit, not by weight. So then, according to Rabbi Meir, that's why he says, I don't care how many there were, it could be a huge amount of, like 1,000 bundles just to one bundle that's usher. That would be like the one egg that fell into 1,000 of good eggs. He wouldn't say there's bittul because what? It's a davar chashuv. But the Rabbanan argue, and they say, what? It depends. How much was there?
I mean, Ya'alamu ba'achas Messiah. Could be used if one got mixed in the two.
Huh?
Could be used.
Yeah, Ya'ala means it comes out and can be used. Right? That's the way they talk about it. If you can use it, you bring it out of the group and you use it. Whatever you want to bring out of that group and use it, but only if it's what? 1 to 200. One bundle fell into 200 good bundles. Or 2 bundles fell into 400 good bundles. Or any of that kind of a ratio would mean there would be a what? Bittul. Right? They would say there's a bittul. If that's, for whatever reason, the Chachamim gave different ratios to different things, like we know meat and milk have 60 to 1 to be batul. In Kiloya Karen, this Isser of Kiloyim, of where things become Asur Bahana, it's a very strong Isser, so they made a higher ratio, 200 to 1. But if you get that ratio, 200 to 1, just like if you have 60 to 1 in meat and milk, it's bittul, it's batul. So the Rabbanan argue with Rabbi Meir. They say what? It doesn't really matter if you sell these Havile Tiltan by unit. Doesn't matter if you count them. If you count them when you sell them, they're not what?
They are not
a davar chashuv. These Havile Tiltan are not a davar chashuv according to Rabbanan. Therefore, it's like regular kiloim. The regular kiloim, you have one question to answer. What's the ratio? Is it 200 to 1? Then there's bittul. If it's less than 200 to 1, there won't be bittul. If there's more than 200 to 1, there will also be bittul. So it's all down to how much is in each group, right? Whatever fell into whatever, and you have to figure out how much of each there was. You have to figure out if there's a ratio of 200 to 1. 200 good to 1 bad. So if you have that ratio, then there'll be bittul. If you don't have that ratio, there won't be. It has nothing to do with if it's counted or not counted. Does that mean the Rabbanan don't hold of this whole idea that a davar chashuv is not batul?
They do.
They hold of it. But they hold of it, the Mishnah says later, 6 specific things. For whatever reason, they are exceptions to the rule. But everything else gets batul. These are the 6 that are so chashuv they don't get batul. Right? And maybe they would agree to other things that aren't stated here. I don't know. Okay. Let's see, the Mishnah goes on to explain Rabbi Meir's Shita. Why does he say these Havile Tiltan are not batul no matter what? Says the Mishnah, Shehaya Rabbi Meir Oimer.
Shehaya Rabbi Meir Oimer, As Eshadaka Limonis, Makdish.
Wait, Mekadesh. Mekadesh, it's a verb.
It becomes sanctified.
It makes the group sanctified, which means it makes it need to be burnt. Right? Sanctified is a borrowed expression here. It just means it's all asur b'hanat, all needs to be burnt. Okay? It's either because hektish is something that's also asur b'hanat, so we use that expression mekadesh, or it's based on the pasuk in the Chumash where it says, when it says to burn these things, it says tukad esh, tukdash. So it's almost like it becomes holy, so we use that expression as an expression of when it becomes asur b'hanat and chayiv to burn. So, what does Rabbi Meir say? Es shadarka limanos, anything that has a way of being counted when it's sold, that is what? Mekadesh. How would you say that in your own language?
That means that's counted means
anything that what its normal way
is
to be sold by unit. It's Mekadesh, which means what?
It's burnt.
But we're using that as an indication of what? But also, if he's saying anything that has a way to be counted will make the whole group Asur Bahana need to be burnt, that means he's not giving any possibility for bittul. Why not?
Because
Esha Darka Limanos, is what? If it's counted when it's sold, if it's sold by unit, then it's an indication that it's what? Davar chashuv. According to Rabbi Meir, and really everybody agrees with the rule. It's just his definition of davar chashuv is a wider definition than everybody else said. If it's counted when it's sold by unit, yikadesh means it will never be batal, and therefore it will always have the effect of making the entire group holy, which means asur bahana and chayat to burn. Okay, and this is where we have that machlokus in the two girsos. At this point in the Mishnah is where we have this machlokus. Is the correct girsa what? What we have in our Gemora, which is what? Es shadarko, which we said would imply what? Yes, everything is. We're talking about limanos. It means by unit. What's the S? We're saying that. Yes, but there's a machlokus whether you have the girsa of Rabbi Meir's definition of davar chashuv. When he gave the definition of davar chashuv, did he use the word S or the word kol? That's a machlokus. Two different manda omrim how to bigoris, which word to insert in his little speech, in Rabbi Meir's little speech. Hu haya omer. He used to go around saying this speech wherever he went. So, not that Rabbi Meir used to change his formula. He had a formula. The question is, what was his formula? Some people remember him saying, Es shadarka limanos. And some people remember him saying, Kol shadarka limanos. When he went around Klal Yisrael telling people his shita, that to be a davar chashuv, that's not batul, it has to fall into a category called Es shadarka limanos. Right? And some people remember him saying a different formula, slightly different wording. Kol shadarka limanos. So he either said anything which its way is to be counted, or S, which means specifically things which are anything which, right? Either he used the word kol, which is more inclusive, or he used the word S, which is more specific. If he used the word kol, then what? Anything that is its ways to be counted, that would imply what?
Anything that means
The Gemora says before the Gemora says ha necha. Everything our Beitsa before would go very well according to that girsa. Why? Because our Beitsa says an egg is not batal.
Yes.
Even 1 in 1,000.
It's not batal.
And that would be very good according to, if our mission was written according to that manda omer of kol shadarka limanos, the Gemora says. Because then Beitsa would be considered what? A davar chashuv. If the definition of davar chashuv has the word kol in it, Rabbi Meir went around publicizing his drasha, his opinion that kol shadarka limanos is a davar chashuv and not batal, then an egg would be included, the Gemara said before. Then our mission and our Beitsa would be understood why it's not batal, why this egg is not batal. Because egg would be a davar chashuv in the eyes of Rabbi Meir. But if the correct girsa in Rabbi Meir, that he went around telling everybody his drasha, his opinion, that a davar chashuv is not batal, includes es shadarka limanos, then the Gemora said before that would mean that the egg is not a davar chashuv. Now, why is that? Why does it depend on that girsa? Remember the reasoning? Kol is what? The word kol. And when Chazal used that word kol, what does that imply? No, in general, the word kol, in general, when you hear the word kol, your ears should, you ever see a dog when like he hears something, it's like his ears prick up? Your ears should prick up when you see that word kol, when you hear the word kol. Are you aware of the implications of the word kol? When Chazal used the word kol.
Not what?
Well, we did discuss it, so I'm glad we're having the opportunity to discuss it again. Let me think if I can find an example Let's say I make a rule, okay? A silly rule, but it's a rule. Let's say I make a rule. I only let into the yeshiva people who wear a black pants and white shirt. Okay?
Yeah.
What if I said, I'll let into the yeshiva anyone cold that wears black pants and white shirt? What would you hear with that?
No. Some people would wear, some people wouldn't wear.
Again, I'm just trying to get you to hear the word kol as being any, right? It includes more than if I just say the rule. Let me think of another example. Okay, let's say I say, I'll only let into the yeshiva someone who knows how to learn Gemora. Or if I say anyone who knows how to learn Gemora, I'll let them in. You hear a bit of a difference between those two?
Anybody means it's more available.
I'll let more people in. Kol. So I say everyone who can at least try to learn Gemora, who knows a little bit about learning Gemora. Whereas if I say, I'll only let people in this yeshiva who know how to learn, and I don't say the word everyone who knows how to learn,
It's more limited.
it makes it more limiting. That's correct. That's why we said if you say kol shadarkali manos, you're including more. All. As opposed to S is more limiting. It's specifically the ones that are counted, which I'm going to be more strict about that rule. Okay? Now, in general, the word kol, as I was saying before, is inclusive of more than the norm, right? Without the word kol, I already get my point across. People have to do this, right? People have to learn Gemora to get into my yeshiva. People have to wear. But if I say anyone, if I say kol, it's already opening it up a bit, opening it up to more than just the normal ones, even ones that are a bit on the borderline, right? So, keeping that in mind, so the Chazal, often when they see the word kol, they ask a question, kol la suimai. This extra word kol is coming to include some other extra case. It's like an extra thing. Just like in the Chumash we have something called a ribui.
Extra case, right?
Like an extra case. Now, how do they hear that from the word kol? That's what I'm trying to explain to you now. The word kol implies every. It's like a bigger word than you had to use. You didn't have to use that word every. You could have just said the regular rule. Things that have this feature will be permissible, or will be us, or whatever. When I say kol, I'm widening the parameters a bit. Any. Even if it's a little bit like that. Okay, so let's be more specific in this case. Right? We're trying to say, is an egg, according to Rabbi Meir, a davar chashuv?
Yes.
So we said it depends. Did Rabbi Meir use a definition of davar chashuv by saying es shadarkali manos to define his shita, or did he say the word kol? If he used the word kol, then we say the word kol what? Kol does what?
Includes everything.
More than you would think, like an extra case, right? In this case, the point is like this. An egg is sometimes counted. Some people do have that habit of counting the eggs when they sell them. But some people don't, at least in the days of Chazal. Maybe today is different. So if I say the word kol, what am I saying? Anything which what? That its way is, the derech is to count it. Okay? And we say that would include an egg. egg is not always counted. That's the point. The word kol is widening the parameters and saying the fact that it's very often counted makes it enough. That's enough to be included in this group. Because I use the word kol. Opening it up.
And if it was bottle, not bottle.
If the word kol is widening the group of what I call davar chashuv, that even if it's just counted, let's say most of the time, but not all the time, I'll still include it in the group of what? Of davar chashuv, according to Rabbi Meir. If it's included in the group of davar chashuv, then we know that davar chashuv is not batal. But if he used the word S, and S isn't inclusive, right? The word S doesn't open up anything, doesn't bring any extra cases, right? It's very specific.
Yeah.
Then that's another way of saying that what does Rebbe Meir consider davar chashuv? Only things that are S shadar kalimanos, which means it's specifically counted, only counted. And eggs are what?
Not a double.
They're not only counted. They'll say they're most of the time counted, but they are sometimes sold by weight.
Mm-hmm.
So if Rebbe Meir, in order to call them a davar chashuv, use the word S, which means he'll only call it a davar chashuv if it's only sold by unit, if it's only counted, then eggs, which are sometimes weighed, would not be included in davar chashuv, according to Rebbe Meir, and therefore will be in trouble. Because why did the Beitsa say an egg is not batal? It should have been batal. It's not a davar chashuv. So we say it really does depend on the girsa of Rebbe Meir, whether he used the word kol, which would include eggs, or S, which would exclude eggs. That's what the Gemora said before. Hanecha lamanda omer. It would go very well according to lamanda omer of kol shadar kalimanos, because then eggs would be included in davar chashuv, and we'd understand why they're not batal. But if he used the word S, right, then it doesn't make sense. The eggs are not only counted, so why would they not be batal? It should be batal. It should have been batal. But we don't understand. Get it?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, Shabbos.
Call to. Pretty generous. Must be a rich guy. Don't forget the yeshiva when you give out your Meister money.
Yeah.
All right.
No, collect for the yeshiva.
Okay. I'll also give your Meister to the yeshiva. All right. Let's go on.
Start next month when we're going to collect the
Uh-huh. Okay, so we're in the middle of this Mishnah, which we now see where it fits into the Mishnah, this question of Rebbe Meir's definition of davar chashuv. Shahaya Rebbe Meir Omer Es Shadar Kalimanos. So in our Gemora, the girsa that it chooses to bring is this girsa, but we know from before there's two girsas. V'chachamim Omrim
Eino Makdish.
Eino Mekadesh. It won't make the whole group Asr Bahana and need to be burned. Ella. Only six things, which we would say the pshat is, only 6 things are so important that they would be called davar chashuv, that will not be batal and therefore they would make the whole group asr. Rabbi Akiva Omer. He says there are 7 things which are so chashuv they will not be batal and therefore would make the whole group asr no matter what the ratio. Elu hein. These are they. Some kind of nuts.
Type of nut.
Hmm?
The type of nut, right?
Egos is a nut.
Yeah.
Egozim are nuts. A certain kind of pomegranate.
Yeah.
Which is what? Chavios are. What's a chavit?
Is a barrel?
Yeah, so this is the plural, chaviot, barrels which are stumos, right, which have never been opened, they're sealed. Right, closed barrels are very chashuv, apparently, and they won't be batal. I think taradim are spinach, so certain chalfei taradim, I don't know exactly what they are, some kind of, maybe the stalks of spinach, I'm not sure. And kalche kruv. Right, a kruv is carob maybe. Not sure. There's cheruvim with a ches and cheruvim with a chaf. So it could be stalks of a carob, or maybe it's not sure what the other kind of kruv is. It's like the coleslaw. What's that called? Where coleslaw comes from? A radish or something. Okay. And the last one is Delas Silvanis, a Greek squash or whatever. And according to the Chachamim, those are 6 things that are so chashuv that they wouldn't be batal. Rabbi Kiva Mosif
is kikar shalbais.
Also what?
Loaves.
Which were made by a balabais, which should mean that they were homemade, but if we'll see in Rosh, maybe it means a baker who baked them himself rather than getting them from outside. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's see the Rashis now on this. Start the Rashis. Hanechalamanta Omer.
Hanechalamanta Omer. Come on.
Rashi says we will see a little bit later on what these 2 Manda Omrim are.
Although it's its way to be counted.
That is one definition of Davar Chashuv.
The Mishnah is Ora, come on.
This will be found in a Mishnah in Orla, as we will see a little bit later on, which we just went through ourselves.
The loy bitul.
Batil.
Not batil.
Those things, right, whatever they are, they're not batil.
משמע כל דבר שיש בני אדם מקפידים עליו.
Kol davar means
anything.
Anything. Sheyesh b'nei adam. That what?
It's a people.
There are people. There are people means not all people, but there are people who are makpid, who are very careful. Hashivusa. Due to its importance, they're very careful to what? The minions.
So in number.
That's how Rashi learns it. If you sell it in a minyan, that's a sign that you hold it. It's a davar chashuv, because you're being very careful with it. You're being very careful to sell it one by one. And then if that's the definition, that you just have to have some people who are makpiv, then what? Then Beitsa, Nami, then a Beitsa also will fit into that definition. Because many people do sell it in a minyan, right? So Rosh is already implying that the word kol wouldn't be so inclusive. Even an egg would be included because not everybody sells it in that way. But if you say the word kol, you're saying anything in the world which even has some shaykhus to being counted. Yeah. Which Rashi learns it has to be many people do sell it that way. Yep. And that's a sign that they care about it. So then eggs would be included. But the Gemora says, Rashi says, if you have the gears of es shadarko, you see, es shadarko implies what?
Something that's designated.
Yeah, but not just designated. It's very special. Right? In other words, it's only. That's all the way. That's the only way people deal with it. It's miyuchad lakach means that it's only that done in that way. It's only. Miyuchad means that's the only way of dealing with it. As opposed to the previous Rashi which said if the word kol just implies that many people do it. If it's es, it means that it's miyuchad l'kach. That's the only way to do it. That nobody in the world would what? Ba'omed. Would sell it ba'omed with an aleph. What does omed mean with an aleph? Are you familiar with this word?
Together?
No. From this word omed, we have another word which is very often used in yeshivas, umdana.
What does umdana mean?
Okay. And by the way, I think it's in Mishnayos. In Mishnayos and Pirkei Avos, if you're a Baki in Pirkei Avos, you would know this word as well, I believe. That it says you shouldn't do your maisros ba'omed. Right? Like meiser is supposed to be what? Do you know how you're supposed to meiser your food? What do you think? If I have 100 apples, how do I meiser it?
10% of the 100.
Right. Well, first of all, I'm supposed to give truma first. Okay, that's a different story. But yes, when it comes down to knowing how much to give for meiser, I have to actually count and measure specifically. Not ba'omed, says the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, I believe. What's the opposite of counting and being medayik to know exactly how much? What's the opposite of that? Let's say I have a whole pile of apples, but I'm a little bit lazy today. I don't want to count them all. I just want to give the meiser and have it done with, so I could eat my apples in peace. You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's two ways of dealing with it. One way is to count it out. You find that you have 90 apples, and you have to give 9 of them to a Levi. Okay? Well, let's say I'm too lazy. Or I don't have enough time because I'm a big muskie. Okay, and I don't want to count out 90 apples. It takes a long time to count 90 apples. So what's the opposite of counting it out? How could I deal with a whole pile of apples? I wanted to meiser them, but I didn't want to have it on my head to meiser it later. I want to just get it out of the way. I don't have enough time.
Estimate.
Estimate, exactly. That's omed. And that's what the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says you shouldn't do. Shalom Aleichem, how are you? Good to see you.
Baruch Hashem.
Fantastic. I got a little of a WhatsApp from Shabbatai saying he still has to wait on his wife, hand and foot.
That's going to take a while.
She's not doing so well, but said Wednesday's going back to work at least.
She had the operation. She had it. Okay.
Yeah, now they're at home. And now, apparently in the morning someone comes to help, but he feels he has to be there the rest of the time, unfortunately. And he hopes to go back to work on Wednesday, but
Not sure.
he's not sure exactly how it's going to work out. So I wrote back saying,
Yours? Yes. Okay. 12. Okay. Let's see what page we're on here.
okay. So I'm just finishing up something with Truly here. So that's Omed, right? How we're defining it now? Omed means estimation, okay? So the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, but you're not allowed to what? To do meisering of, normally in their day, meisering meant crop, not necessarily money. And like I said, you have a whole pile, and you say to yourself, looks like it's about 80 apples to me. So I'll give how many to the Levi?
Give myself Rishon, right?
If I estimate there to be 80, how many would I end up giving the Levi?
2?
8.
8.
A tenth of 80 is 8. Correct?
Yes.
But if I really count it out, how many I'm going to find out are there?
More?
Yeah, like I'll find out, let's say 90. I mean, of course, it could work out the other way. But since there's a possibility that it would end up being inaccurate, an estimation would not necessarily be accurate. Therefore,
you need to count them explicitly.
That's right. So Rashi's using that same word here. Okay? Rashi says, if you need es shadar kalimanos to be a davar chashuv, it has to be what?
Whole.
Everybody sells it by number. And nobody sells it by omed. Omed. Rashi uses the alternative accounting, not like I said, by weight. Rashi used a different. Rashi said the word omed. That's how we got into this whole discussion. Why are we talking about omed? Because Rashi brought in the word omed. So what's Rashi saying? If the definition of davar chashuv is with the word es, that means only if something is exclusively sold by unit will it be a davar chashuv according to Rebbe Meir, and not. It has to be nobody would sell it ba'omed.
Yes.
What does that mean? Nobody would sell it
Estimated.
by estimating, right?
Which page are you on?
We have a rule that if nobody else is here, we go back and we do a review from an earlier page. But it's the middle of the idea, so it wouldn't make sense to do it with you. So let's go back to where we remember our being from the other times. And that would be on Lamed Aleph Hamid Beis. Are we on Lamed Aleph Hamid Beis?
I think it's Lamed Aleph Hamid Beis.
Okay. So we had these cases of some pretty wild cases, I think, where we said Rebbe Meir would even allow you to take apart a wall, if it wasn't cemented, of course, in order to reach
Fruit.
something on the other side, which is some kind of food that you need for Yom Tiv. And that part wasn't, okay. That part we saying everybody agrees if it's not cemented, it's not an Isser D'Oraisa anyways. But the Chiddush the Gemora said was that these bricks that he's taking apart should have been considered muksa. According to the rules of muksa, whoever holds of muksa, which we're assuming Rebbe Meir does, hold of muksa, these bricks should certainly have been considered muksa because we brought a Kal V'chomer from Reb Nachman's case. Reb Nachman talked about some kind of a construction site where they finished building, but
There's still pieces around.
there's still bricks lying around, so we said if they're just lying around, that shows you're not really intending to use them for a building. Then they wouldn't be muksa. You could use them because they have a function of using them as kind of some kind of a surface to lie down on. But if they are piled up nicely to show that he wants to use them again for the next building project, then there's still muksa. So the Gemora says, Kal v'chomer, bricks that are part of an actual wall, even if they're not cemented, should be at least considered muksa. So why would Rebbe Meir let you take apart that wall? It still defies logic. To which the Gemora said a very big Kiddush, at least in Rebbe Meir, that since it's Yom Tov we're talking about here, and on Yom Tov there is a rule that for Melechas Ochel Nefesh you're allowed to do Malacha on Yom Tov just to get food ready to eat, to cook it or whatever. So he's saying part of that preparation is getting to the food, and that in order to do that you have to take apart a wall that's made out of bricks of muksa. You're allowed to do it according to Rebbe Meir. Perhaps the Tanakhama, who doesn't seem to agree with that in our Mishnah, would disagree with that concept. The Gemara is saying it at least in Rebbe Meir, to understand Rebbe Meir, that Chiddush, right? Now we said that would therefore be a rule, according to Rebbe Meir at least, that for the sake of Ochel Nefesh, you would be allowed to transgress the prohibition of muksa, which is only midrabanan. So the Rabbanan said, look, we created this Isser, will allow you under these circumstances to transgress the Isser. In other words, we'll remove the Isser at this moment for the sake of Ochel Nefesh. But that shouldn't be confused that the other case, where it's actually cemented, if the wall was actually cemented, they would not allow you to take apart a wall. The Gemara said before clearly that would not fly. Right? The Gemara originally thought it was cemented, and we had problems. How could anyone allow you to take apart a wall? And no one said, well, it's a Yom Tov, and for the sake of Ochel Nefesh, we'll let you do the malacha of taking apart a wall. No. We had to create a new case where it was not cemented to make sense out of it. So we see that we draw the line. If it's a malacha doraisa, even though there are many malachas doraisa we're allowed to do for Ochel Nefesh, but taking apart a wall is not one of them. If it would have been a cemented wall, it would have been us, or even according to Rebbe Meir, who seems to bend some of the rules for Ochel Nefesh, he would not bend those rules, not a deraisa set of rules. Even though there are malachas which are mutter for Ochel Nefesh, this is not one of them. But if it's only nisur d'Rabbanan and muksa, then we say Rebbe Meir would allow you to be, in a sense, transgress the isur of muksa in order to get the food, which is, in a sense, for the sake of Ochel Nefesh. So that's a chiddush that we said in Rebbe Meir. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then we got into this new case, which I think we discussed to some extent. We said chos moshe b'karka, some kind of a hole in the ground for storing, I guess, food. Perhaps that's the easiest way to learn. That we're still talking about storing food in a certain place. But instead of in a house behind the wall, this time it's in some kind of a cistern or something, some kind of a pit or a cave, which doesn't have bricks closing it, but it does have like a door, and that door has rope handles, I guess, to tie it together to keep people out.
Where are you holding?
This would probably be about 10 lines from the bottom, maybe 11 or 12 lines from the bottom of the page. First word is in the line Amar Shmuel.
Here it is. Okay, I got it.
Chos Moshe B'Karka. You have it, Yisraeli?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so now we're going to be talking about these kind of small wooden doors, let's say, that are closed by rope being tied together, almost like we tie our shoes to keep them closed. You tie up these things. It's a little bit like the gartel on a Sefer Torah, I guess, that we tie it up to close it off, to keep it closed. So now the question is, untying those knots, that's going to be one question, or just cutting the knots is going to be another question entirely, just to cut through, to get through the knots and open up the door.
Cosmos is the ropes?
It seems that it might be the ropes. I'm not sure if the cosmos are the doors and the ropes are on that, or they're actually another name for... Because Rashi, let's see, Rashi uses a French word, which we thought we could rely on you for that, but said you never heard of it in Montreal. First wide line in Rashi uses a French word. Chosmos parmdoris. Parmdoris. I mean, anyways, an S at the end of the word is not always pronounced like parlez-vous. There's an S on the end nobody pronounces, so I'm not sure if you pronounce this one. Parm, or farm maybe. Parm or farm. Doris.
Some of these things are old
Ardori.
French.
Ardori.
Some things may be old French. Old
Exactly.
French.
Yeah, so sometimes, just like Old English, we don't always understand the words in Chaucer. I'm sure not all these old French words are known to even fluent French speakers, but anyhow, sometimes it helps, and sometimes you have an addition where it'll at the end of a Gemora, you'll have amongst all the many Meforshim at the end of a Gemora, sometimes they have something called the Matargim, where someone came along and took all these old French words of Rashi and he translated them into Yiddish. So sometimes if you know Yiddish, you can also look back there. Like if you want to look this one up, you can look it up if you want. Because in this edition you have, there's bound to be that parish called the Matargim, but I don't think I have it in mind. But if you want to look it up. Anyhow, and also sometimes he also adds in the Hebrew word. We know today you can buy in the store a Targum of Rashi, where it will give you the old French and then we'll translate it into English and so on and so forth. So it'll be a good safer to have as a reference tool. Anyhow, the second Rashi in that line, however, Chos Moshe Bakarka, Rashi says Kagon. You want to read it, Sruli?
Chos Moshe Bakarka means
Well, let's see what Rashi says it means. Kagon, for example.
Lassos.
That's right. That's what leads me to believe that the word chosmos is Rashi. Very often, the very first few words in Rashi will be an exact translation. So Rashi seems to say they are dalassos. Cosmos would be like another way of saying the doorways themselves. Of the pische boros, of the entrances, I guess doorways that are placed in the entrances of these boros, which would be pits of water, like huge open spaces in the ground called a pit, a bore, or ma'ara, or a cave, right? Any, like I guess, space which you could use to store things, and then you want to keep people out or keep animals out, so you make a doorway on it. So if you have a doorway, and those doors are what? Hasigurim, they close.
Hasigurim, they close.
Kishrei Chavalim.
Kishrei.
Tied ropes.
With the kishrei, kishrei are like knots of kavalim, of ropes. Right? In other words, I guess if you know how to tie your knots well enough, like a seaman, and the sailors know how to tie these knots. Unless you know what you're doing, you can't just come up and untie it. So it's in effect, it's like a lock. In their day, it was like a lock. So it could be chosmos. It means this setup of ropes, which was like a lock on the doorways, on these kind of places for storing stuff in the ground. Or maybe the doorway itself is chosmos. I'm not sure which, because Rashi seems to give right away the word dilasos to translate chosmos. It almost sounds like Rashi saying that is what the real word chosmos means in this case, like a door, the doorways, the actual doors, like wooden doorways. Like when you go into a saloon, right? We used to have that on our kitchen. We got these swinging doors, you know. It's always good for excitement.
Classical Western style.
And then if you want to tie it up, so we actually had like a bolt, and we didn't want any of the kids coming into the kitchen. We bolted shut. But I guess you could tie them shut with a rope.
That's really the Wild West.
Especially when a kid got their fingers caught in them. It was really wild.
Yeah.
But at least on Erev Pesach, kick the kids out of the kitchen. Alright, so basically we have a very similar thing to our Mishnah, where I have food stored in a place that to reach that food I have to do something that at least resembles a malacha. Am I allowed to do that on Yom Tov, I suppose we're talking about, right? So Shmuel said if you have this set up, Chos Moshe B'Karka, you could be what? Sruli, what does Shmuel say?
Chos Moshe Bakarka. Shmuel.
Yes, sir. You know where we are? first two words on the line. Omar Shmuel.
First
Lamed Aleph
one
Amud
should be matir.
Matir. So he says what? Simply speaking, matir would mean what?
Permitted.
Permit. But ironically, the word matir can also mean another thing. You know what the word matir can mean?
Yes,
Yes. Do you know what that means?
liberate.
That's right. Liberate. That's a very good translation. But there's one more translation, which is also the word matir, is specifically used.
Permit.
Yes. So those are the two. Liberate.
Face
And there's one more meaning of the word matir, which is a little bit more specific. It's untying. It's actually used to untie a knot. You say lahatir kesher. That might actually work better in this case, because we're actually talking about, as Rashi says, these ropes were tied up in some kind of a permanent knot. That I guess if you good at untying knots, then it'll work out. But you know how it is when you tie a knot so well, because nobody else should get in, it may be hard to untie it.
You can't do it yourself.
So first of all, Shmuel says he's matir, which could theoretically mean he just permits it, and we understand what that means. He permits you to untie it, but it could actually mean technically in this case, matir, he allows you to actually matir, to untie it. Because that's a permanent knot, right? A knot that's made for more than 24 hours called a permanent knot. And that's an actual malacha, to create a knot that's more than 24 hours. It's called a kesher shel kayama, is a malacha. And to untie a knot that was made to be a kesher shel kayama, that was meant to be more than 24 hours, is also a malacha. So either way, he's allowing you to untie this knot, which is a permanent knot. So you have the same question in the way that we said before. When it was a matter of taking apart the wall, we said no. Nobody would let you take apart a wall, let's say that's cemented, that's a real malacha to untie, to take apart. But here Shmuel's saying these knots are, I would think, permanent knots. Maybe Shmuel doesn't look at them as permanent. Maybe that's the pshat. But I would say these knots are permanent. Because a permanent knot, what's the definition of a permanent knot in Hilchos Shabbos? It's made to last more than 24 hours. So I assume if you're storing, I don't know, wine or anything within these pits, right? You know why, by the way, they used to store things there? Not just because they didn't have tons of storage space like we do, but also it's cooler, right? It's a much colder, when you in the ground is much colder. So it's like a natural refrigerator. In the days when there was no real refrigerator, they had to be innovative in finding colder places to store things.
Like cellars.
Like a cellar,
What
correct.
happens when somebody's imprisoned?
What?
Someone's imprisoned,
Someone's imprisoned what?
tied to a chair, yeah, tied with jealous.
Are you allowed to untie him
Yeah,
because he's in danger?
I don't know.
You're asking on Shabbos or Yom Tov?
Shabbos.
Shabbos, are you allowed to untie him? Look, I
I'll give you the
assume that...
medical side of it.
Yeah. He's in danger.
He's in danger.
The doctor posits is in
That's
danger, so
medical,
obviously you're allowed to break
psak.
Shabbos if he's really in danger.
Is that like a person can die from that?
And it gets pretty sick.
Meaning because
And
it stops the
because you could
circulations in his hands.
You could risk your life.
It stops, it's impeding the circulation. So it's like kind of a dangerous thing.
The people in Soviet Russia and Siberia did not have a good time in things over there. A lot of them were sick. And the cold. Cold makes you sick.
Right. But I didn't think he was asking because of that. I thought you were asking because of the circulation in the hands. What are you asking?
Circulation of the hands.
Also. Why do you have a problem? Because the heat is gone from there. You don't get circulation, you don't get blood going to a part, then it cools down. It cools and it doesn't function properly. When the area
Could lead
is
to
cold,
gangrene.
when the area is cold, it doesn't function. You lose function.
Oh, wow, so it's dangerous.
Yeah. I've never heard of someone having danger for eating a popsicle. That tongue froze.
Yeah, I'm sure it's happened.
Yeah.
All right,
Kids always
anyhow.
a little bit take chances. I'll take a chance on the popsicle.
Yeah. It's not a danger that they mind taking. Alright, so the point is over here, I'm assuming that these things are, there's food being stored in these pits or these caves to keep them cool or whatever. But he doesn't want them to be stolen, so he created a kind of a doorway system where there's doors actually in front of the entrance. And those doors, to keep them shut, he tied them together in such a way that he really felt it will keep people out, at least to some extent. So I imagine that kind of a knot is a permanent knot. And now Shmuel's saying you're allowed to untie those knots. To me, that's a big kiddush, because it's almost like saying before you're allowed to do a malacha to get to the food. Before we were saying you couldn't do a malacha to get to the food. So it could be, it depends which malacha. Taking apart a wall, that malacha we don't let. And maybe this malacha, untying a knot, would be considered one of the malachas that is permissible on Yom Tov to do for the sake of getting to food, etc. It's not clear. So let's see Rashi. Matir.
Matir is a kesher.
You see Rashi's using it in the sense, Rashi learns that it's being used in the sense of matir as a kesher. See that? You see that, just a second. You see the Rashi, Jack? Second wide line of Rashi.
Yeah, here it is, matir.
Now Rashi, it's a run on Rashi. He says you read together with the word matir as hakesher. That's a whole sentence now, 3-word sentence.
Yeah.
So Rashi's using the word matir that's in the Gemora, not just permit it, but to actually untie. Because Rashi puts it together with the word kesher. So Rashi's saying, yes, Shmuel says you're allowed to actually untie those knots. That's how Rashi gets around it. You see, I said they were a kesher shel kayama. I said they were permanent knots, because who would tie a knot in such a way that's not to be permanent? Right? You're trying to keep people out. You tie a gezunta knot. Rashi's learning no. They're not permanent. They're not made to be permanent. And Rashi says, what's the proof of that? Who asui. Rashi's proof that they're not permanent is what? Shaharei, because behold,
all the time is
asui means what?
It's made.
It's made. So such a knot is made to do what? Lahatir tamid. To untie what? Tamid.
All the time.
Always, right? All the time. So Rashi learns it's kind of like a latch, as it were. Just like in our refrigerators and all these things, we have sometimes a latch, but it's there to be, you get into the habit. As you want to get into the cupboard, you flip the latch, and you get in. So Rashi's learning these. It's not really a situation where you're trying to keep people out. Sort of. This is not the lock, really. It's not really the lock, as it were. These knots are just to keep it generally shut. But they're made in such a way, because the whole day the maid or whatever is coming in and out, whoever's going to be going into there to get the food is doing it on a constant basis. So therefore, obviously, each time you tie it, what's your intention? That it should be untied within 24 hours, right? And that makes it, by definition, not a kesher shel kayama. And therefore, that's maybe part of Shmuel's Kiddush. You're allowed to untie it on Yom Tov because it's not a kesher shel kayama. Because we know that if it was made in such a way, not really to be a permanent knot, but that people are constantly coming in and out of there. So therefore, and the truth is, I would say, based on my original assumption that it was a kesher shel kayama, that it would depend maybe on the kind of situation. If you know it's a storage area that you hardly ever go into, and you really did want to keep people out of there for a while, then that might be a kesher shel kayama. In the Rashi's case, it's more like something that's used constantly, Rashi says, so then it wasn't really made to be permanent. So it could be, depends on the situation. You need mincha? I don't know the exact timing, but it's good to keep the door open so you hear what's going on. let's finish Shmuel. So A, you can untie it. That's not a problem because it's not a kesher shakayama. Rashi says. Aval, let's finish Shmuel. Aval,
Lo mafkia.
you can't be mafkia. That means you can't just remove it entirely. You can untie it, but you can't remove it entirely. Whatever that means. Below chotek, and you can't just cut it off. Right? He's not going to allow you to just cut it off. You can untie it, but not cut it off. Let's see what those two things are. Rashi of lo mafkia.
Lo mafkia hachevo.
To take off the chevel would be, Rashi says specifically, what does that entail? Listor avuso. Right? The word av with an ayin means what? Thickness, right? So you have this thick rope, right? So you could take it apart. Or you could take apart the rope, like this, strand by strand. Take the rope apart. Rashi says, no, that's what Shmuel says you're not allowed. You can untie it, but you can't take apart the rope to sort of destroy its thickness. And Rashi uses one more word here. Gedila so. Okay. Now, Gedila, it comes from the word gadol, of course, but it often means braiding, right? Like it's also the word that's used for a girl who braids her hair. They use sometimes this word. So I think what happens is to make a proper thick rope, you kind of have to twine it all together, braid it together, many strands. So that's what you want to take apart theoretically, and that's what Shmuel's saying you can't. You can't just take apart the strands and take apart its thickness.
How do they make rope there? How do they make rope?
It's kind of like braiding hair. Take a lot of strands and then you just keep twisting and braiding it together until it becomes like a much thicker strand. Okay, one thing you can't do is to be mafkia, that's what Rashi just said, and you also can't be chotech. That's maybe easier, but let's see what Rashi says about that. V'lo chotech, don't cut it. Why can't I cut the rope off if I need it? Deha, let me read it, Jack. Deha.
Deha stira he.
You see, Rashi's calling this stira. Just like taking apart the wall was considered to be destroying the building of the wall. If you just cut this rope off, Rashi said it's also like destroying a building.
Stira he. The yesh stira the binyan shel karka.
Right? This malacha of stira, where I have a problem with taking things apart, it's with a building specifically. It's the opposite of building. Building is the one malacha in the positive direction. The same malacha in the opposite direction called stira.
Disassemble.
Right, but it has to be specifically with karka, right? Something connected to the karka. So that's this case where the doorway is part of the doorway that opens into a cavity in the ground of some sort. These doorway is connected to the karka. Even the ropes that are connected to that doorway are considered part of the karka. So that would be a proper malacha of stira, stira soil, as Rashi called it before, as the Gemora called it before. So those are two things that Shmuel will not allow.
Okay.
All right, we'll see you when we come back if it's still enough time. Okay. So.
Shmuel is no problem with stira?
What?
He doesn't hold as a problem of
No, it
stira?
says you can't do it. You can't do it. You can't. It doesn't let you. Because there is a problem. So in a sense, it's just like the case of the wall. We said if the wall had bricks that were cemented together, you can't just take apart that wall to get to the food on the other side. Same thing here. You can't do a malacha of stira to get to the food. That's not one of the malachas that's allowed. So why are you allowed to untie the ropes if they're tied together? Because that's not a malacha, because it's not made to be permanent. A knot is not made to be permanent, but it is part of the doorway. If you somehow destroy the rope, you cut it off, or you take it apart by the strands, you've basically just done the malach of stira. You've taken apart a building.
If you cut it.
You can't do that, right? Because you're taking apart a building, as it were. Well, he's out. Do you want to finish the Rashis on Daf Gimel, or do you want to stay here on Daf Lamed Aleph?
Finish him with Daf Gimel.
Okay. So I guess keep one hand there for if he comes back in time. Otherwise, let's go on through the Rashis, which we hadn't really done all those Rashis yet. So the last one was Omed. Remember we have the word Omed
Come on, estimating.
Right, we went into that. In the Rashi, he used the word Omed. Where's that? Yeah, I have it. Why equal a Maimar? So the Gemora said, according to the Mandomer, who says the Girs is S Shadarko Limanos, that means it has to be specifically sold by unit all the time to be a Davar Chashuv. Then what are you going to say? What does that mean? What are you going to say, Rashi? How are you going to explain our Beitsa? Because Hare Beitsa. When you talk about Beitsa, Harbe B'nei Adam, many people. It gets sold by. That's right. They don't actually count it out. They just say, it looks like about 30, right? Below minion. So if they don't actually count it, they just estimate it. That means that according to this Girsa, it's not a Davar Chashuv, right? And if many people do that, then it means it's not specifically sold by unit. It can sometimes be sold by unit, but sometimes not. So according to this version, this Girsa, we would say Beitsa would not be a Davar Chashuv. It should have been Batal in the Beitsa. So why do you say if it falls into 1,000, it's not Batal? It should have been Batal. So then we go into the actual Mishnah in Orla. Tiltan, Rashi says, what are Tiltan? Which are what?
Which are sweet.
How do you define that? Kitnios, we know,
Types of
right, on Pesach, right? Careful not to eat kitnios, but how would you define kitnios in Rashi?
beans.
That's right, things that are like beans, right? Anything in that category, okay? So let's continue in the Rashi.
Lematok kadera, to make the pot sweet, right?
Limatek, yes. That's right. In other words, the spice is used to more of like a spice or to flavor. Okay? So that's why people like to have it on hand, some kind of a spice or whatever. And it's sold as a bundle, I suppose. So we say, if it falls into a bunch of other ones, yidalku. Or no, it's even before it fell into. We just said in general, if they're kiloya karam, if they grew with other species, yidalku, they have to get burnt. Rashi says why?
Yidalku have to get burnt. Kadin.
Kiloya karam. Like the normal din of kiloya karam. It's a normal halacha in kiloya karam. Things grow together, they have to what? Burn them. Shnamar.
Pen
tukdash, right? The Torah says, don't let them grow together, pen tukdash, lest they have to, whatever tukdash means, and the Gemora makes a drasha, tukad eish, right? That you have to burn it in fire. Because they are asur b'hana, right? That usually goes together. Something's asur b'hana, usually it has to be burnt. Okay? So Rashi's saying over here, because anything that grew together, two species grew together, they make each other asur, just the fact that they grew together, so therefore it fits into the pasuk in the Chumash that says they have to be burnt. Okay? But then the Rabbanan say, Ya'alu ba'achas u'masayim. If you have 200 to 1, then it can come up. Shel heter. If one of these bundles, which is a problematic bundle of kiloya karam, falls into 200 bundles of heter, of good kavile tilton, which is not kiloya karam, then ya'aleh, bring up. Rashi says the word should be understood like this. What does ya'aleh mean? Ya'aleh echad mehem. Take out one of them. So it's not like I said. I said take one out and use it. He's saying no. When we use the word ya'aleh, we mean actually take one out and burn it. Because one of them fell in. So there's a chumrah, even though you're going to really rely on bittul, but to at least take one out and burn it. So that's what it means. Take it up and burn it. Take one out and burn it. And then all the rest will be mutter. Right? So if you have 201, and one of them you know was a bad bundle that fell in, take that one out. You don't know which one it is. You take sort of symbolically one out, you burn it, and then the rest are mutter. Where does this 201 come from, Rashi says? Bittul kiloim. This is a special shear, 201, which the Chazal were kovea for bittul in the category of kiloim, where things go together. And also, if you're talking about orla, would also be echad matayim, right? Both of those. If you want to know the ratio for bittul in kiloya kerem and also in orla, right? And they go together apparently, and therefore that makes sense that this Mishnah, which you're talking about kiloim, is in Maseches Orla, because they go together, like Rashi's saying now. They have the same shear, they have the same ratio for bittul. So there's a connection between them. So therefore, in Maseches Orla, we have sometime we're talking about kiloim and kerem. Now, we said, but Rebbe Meir used to say that these chavanim are not batal. Why? Shahaya Rebbe Meir Omer.
Because Rebbe Meir would say.
He used to say, and Rashi says this has to be explained. Kilomar, that is to say. This is why Rebbe Meir said, Kulam Yidolku. He said they should all get burnt. Why? Because they don't have bittul. Now, why did he say they don't have bittul? Shahaya Rebbe Meir Omer. Lima knows. Ain bataling. Since their normal way is to be sold by unit, they're not batal. And therefore, the Kaddishin, they make the whole group Asur Bahana. To make all that got mixed up together Asur. The Chamim Omrim, they don't agree. All things, no matter how they're sold, are batal. There's a bittul. The Torah says bittul. Everything, all fruits should be batal. But only 6 exceptions to the rule, which are menuyim kan, which are listed here. Very chashuv, right? So Rebbe Meir says, no, it doesn't have to be that chashuv. Even if it's just sold by unit is not batal, it's a davar chashuv that's not batal. And we're about to say no. A normal thing like that would be batal. What's not batal? Very, very chashuv things. These 6 are very, very chashuv. Right? And Rashi says these things, it goes a perech, rimoni badan. Perech and badan were just Makomo saying they're places, in their day and age, there were places. Right? Like Johannesburg. So something grown in Johannesburg, and people say, oh, that's an apple from Johannesburg. Have such a thing? No. There must be some fruit from South Africa. People say, oh, that's grown in Malarkey, or I don't know, wherever, right?
Malawi.
Right? And therefore it makes it very special, because people say, oh, the ones that grow there, they're so special. Right? So Rashi's just saying, it's not that they're actually different per se, they're just from a certain place which people happen to like very much. That makes it very special. And then the other things are kolche, what do we say they were? Kolche kruv. Alin shalahem. They grow with the leaves. These kruvim, with carobs or whatever they were of Eretz Yisrael. Hayagadol ke'ilan. They were as big as a tree. They were that big. Kedamrina b'kesuvas. The Gemora in Kesuvah says they really were big.
Stop here.
Yeah.
Good,
Shkoyach to you.